Back to another YouTube video. It's your boy Uriah G. Today we're gonna react to 10 wrestling legends who destroyed their bodies for the business. Let's get right into the video.
Nobody wrestling the same as they got into it. Nobody gets out of professional wrestling the same as they got into it. That is just the way it is, and if you're good enough to get to the top of the business and stay there, you will be lucky to walk away with a decent quality of life and a body that is mostly comprised of its natural parts. For some of the industry's biggest names, however, the punishment they took in the ring may have led to incredible success, but it also left them having to deal with the very real after effects as they got older, the spotlight faded, and the adrenaline wore off. I'm Adam Pachisi from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 wrestling legends who destroyed their bodies for the business. Join us. Number 10, Hulk Hogan. Turns out, when it comes crashing down and it hurts inside, it really, really hurts. Hulk Hogan was never known for his intense work rate or having a high-risk style. On the contrary, he kept it simple and low impact as much as possible.
We're probably gonna talk about like the leg drop, the atomic leg drop that, you know, had him have multiple surgeries at one point.
But a 300-pound man jumping into the air and landing arse first on plywood thousands of times has its consequences. More than likely, due to his leg drop finisher, the Hulkster has had to suffer with an agonizing back injury which required somewhere in the region of 10 procedures, including fusion surgery to make him somewhat mobile. Add that to abdominal, face and shoulder surgeries, not to mention knee and hip replacements, and Terry has been in and out of the hospital way more times than he did clean jobs during his decades-long career. In all seriousness, Hogan may have been paid handsomely and enjoyed a degree of creative control that few, if any, in the business ever get to enjoy, but he clearly suffered for his success, and it took a lot more than prayers and vitamins, and he did develop a painkiller problem for a while, to make sure he can
Painkiller problem? I ain't even know about that. I don't think I did.
still get up and about. Number 9, Steve Austin. Right next to Hulk Hogan in the top bracket of wrestling's biggest ever draws sits Stone Cold Steve Austin. Unlike the Hulkster, Austin did wrestle in intense style as far as work rate and bumping was concerned, and also suffered a particularly devastating injury.
Oh man, this the Owen Hart and Stone Cold match where Stone Cold had gotten paralyzed and it dang near ended his career. It's a crazy moment.
Due to a pile driver gone wrong. Not to discount the time The Undertaker tried to murder Hulk Hogan with his own needlessly reckless tombstone, of course. After getting dropped on that stack of dimes he calls a neck by Owen Hart at SummerSlam 97, Austin worried that he would be paralyzed due to the immediate loss of feeling in his lower extremities. Luckily, the Texas Rattlesnake was able to walk out of the arena and continue to wrestle afterwards, but the damage to his neck required spinal fusion surgery, costing him a year of his career. After going under the knife, Austin knew he was on borrowed time and had to call it a day in 2003 when not just his neck but also his back and particularly his knees, which had bothered him since his college football days, were telling him his time was up.
Yeah, I definitely could say though, his biggest injury was that match against Owen Hart. Correct me if I'm wrong. That was like his biggest injury where he got paralyzed from the neck from the power driver, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons on why they banned the power driver. So
Bionic Redneck was able to come back for one more match over 2 decades later, having said no numerous times to other pitchers due to his physical condition. Number 8, the Dynamite Kid. With his enviable quickness and agility combined with precision technique and aggression, the Dynamite Kid wowed audiences as well as locker rooms with a revolutionary style that combined techniques learned from the UK, Canada, Mexico, and Japan. Dubbed by Bret Hart as pound for pound the greatest wrestler who ever lived, the Dynamite Kid was light years ahead of his time, vaunted for his state-of-the-art classics with favourite rival the original Tiger Mask. All that high flying and those big bumps came at a cost, however, and by the mid-1980s...
Like, I heard of the Dynamite Kid, I just don't know too much about him, but we better get into depth on why he destroyed his business for the business, on why, you know, like, the backstory of it.
Tommy Billington's gassed up.
Oh, there go Tito Santana.
body was rapidly breaking down. Things came to a head on December 13th, 1986, when the British Bulldogs were defending their WWE Tag Team titles at a house show. After simply jumping over Don Morocco, who was lying on the canvas, Dynamite collapsed to the mat in pain and was rushed to a local hospital where it was discovered that he had ruptured 2 discs and needed immediate surgery. He was never quite the same again, and in the years after his career ended prematurely, Billington was paralysed and had to use a wheelchair due to years of back, neck, and leg.
That's sad to hear. But I'm glad that, he's still, able to, move around. I know it's devastating because especially with the situation, like I said, we just talked about Stone Cold.
Injuries brought on by his uncompromising in-ring approach. Number 7, Terry Funk. There is a scene in the acclaimed documentary Beyond the Mat where Terry Funk visits his doctor who, after giving the Funker some x-rays, expresses his disbelief that Terry is even able to walk, let alone wrestle, given that he had no cartilage in his knees. That was in 1997.
No cartilage in his knees.
Terry Funk wrestled his final match in 2017. It is a testament to the man from the Double Cross Ranch's toughness that he was able to keep going for as long as he did when his body was beyond wrecked from a career that began in 1965. In his 2005 autobiography, Funk, who also suffered cracked vertebrae, untold number of concussions, and all manner of other debilitating injuries in the ring, admitted that his body screamed at him every
Hey, I definitely know for a fact he's had injuries because Terry Funk is definitely a pioneer of wrestling. He's been in different promotions, WCW. I don't know the other promotions he was in. I know he was in WWF, but he was in some other promotions. I see that's Arn Anderson. I could tell that's him even from him just standing backwards. Terry Funk, he was definitely like one of the hardcore original wrestlers, like Mick Foley and stuff like that.
Morning, and it was difficult to even get out of bed, much less move around once he did so. The former NWA World's Heavyweight Champion had, of course, tried many times to call it a day, retiring for the first time in 1983. He was beat up back then, and his Indian summer as a deathmatch king only put more miles on a body that already had way too many on it to begin with. Number 6, Mick Foley. On the back cover of
We just said Mick Foley.
Foley's tremendous first autobiography, Have a Nice Day, there is a picture of the best-selling author as Mankind annotated to show all the injuries he had suffered in his career to that point. These included a separated right shoulder.
That is a lot. That's gotta be at least 20 to 30 or something like that.
Dislocated and fractured left shoulder, torn meniscus, torn abdominal, 2 herniated discs, 5 broken ribs, a bruised kidney, and, 2/3 of his ear being ripped off. And honestly,
yup, that's a scary injury right there. When his ear got ripped off from the ring rope. It's just, I don't know, man.
That's not even half of it. Mrs. Foley's baby boy was determined to give fans a performance every single night, and in his mind, that typically meant taking some sort of gnarly bump, like the stomach-churning Nestea plunge fall onto concrete. For the really big matches, Foley would take it to the next level, allowing himself to, for example, get thrown off and through the top.
And this match right here, when he faced Undertaker, I ain't even talking about the Triple H Hell in a Cell match. I'm talking about the Undertaker. This man got thrown off the cage through the announce table, got back up. He was already injured in the match. He went back there, they tried to carry him with a stretcher. He came back and wanted to continue the match.
Of Hell in a Cell, or, for example, get repeatedly blasted in the head with unprotected chair shots, or, for example, look, we could be here all day doing this, couldn't we? In recent years, Mick has been open about the health issues he faces, including muscular, skeletal, and neurological damage, confessing that he is paying a steeper price than he...
Mick Foley, I ain't even gonna say Mick Foley, I'm gonna say Cactus Jack, regardless of whether persona, but most of the times when he was Cactus Jack or Mick Foley, he was gonna do some hardcore stuff in the ring. He definitely put a lot, he destroyed his bodies for our entertainment. He definitely did.
Ever thought imaginable. Number 5, The Undertaker. He may have portrayed an undead zombie mortician who felt little if any pain, but rest assured Mark Calaway was hurting something bad as early as the mid-90s. The wear and tear of bumping in that hard ring while maintaining that maddening WWE schedule was enough to break The Undertaker's body down to the point that, in early 1994, the dead man was forced to take an extended sabbatical due to a chronic back
Giant Gonzalez
injury which caused him to miss WrestleMania 10. From there, it seemed like not a year would go by that Taker wouldn't suffer some sort of broken bone or torn muscle, though to give him credit, he usually just soldiered on through the pain for the good of the team. Seriously, if there is a part of Calaway's body that hasn't endured some sort of trauma, I would be amazed, and he's got the scars to prove it.
Undertaker's definitely, because he's been wrestling his whole career. His whole career. He's not young anymore. He retired, years ago. He's put on so many matches with so many people. But, back in like 2015, 2014, he was already dealing with more injuries and pain. I think he got injured in his match against Brock Lesnar, where Brock, broke his streak. Let's continue the video. Just know that Undertaker, he's a legend. He destroyed his body for our entertainment.
To speak of his replaced hips and knees. The WWE Hall of Famer wanted to keep wrestling for longer, but realizing his body simply couldn't do what his mind wanted it to, he called it a day in 2020 and now contends with daily pain and discomfort while walking with a permanent limp. Number 4, Kevin Nash.
I think I heard about Kevin Nash, like injuries and stuff. I don't know.
Jim Cornette once famously said Kevin Nash only had 6 moves in his arsenal, one of which was a hair flip, in trying to make a point about Big Sexy's supposed lack of work rates. Sometimes referred to as Big Lazy, Nash perhaps came from the school of thought that it was better to work smart than
they made him WWF champion.
Work hard, but nobody can deny the physical toll his chosen profession took on his 7-foot frame.
Did he beat Bob Backlund in like 9 seconds?
During his career, Nash suffered injuries to his bicep, neck, and famously his quad, while his back and knees suffered greatly from the wear and tear of the ring and the road. After retiring, the former WWE champion shared an image on social media showing his, in Nash's words, deformed and basically crippled body. He required a knee replacement and said getting his hips to realign was incredibly painful. The pain wouldn't end there for Nash, however, as in recent years he suffered with shoulder injuries and yet more back and neck trouble, for which he sought stem cell treatment. A pre-wrestling stint playing professional basketball along with heavy weight training can't have helped, but Nash's current plight is mostly down to his almost 3 decades spent in the squared circle. Number 3, Keiji Muto. Keiji Muto burst onto the scene in the mid-1980s for New Japan Pro Wrestling, and by the end of the decade had grown to international renown thanks to his work in WCW. Muto just blew minds as well as
the classic green mist.
Missed whenever he was in his great Muta guise, with moves like the handspring elbow and moonsaults. He was one of New Japan's top stars during the 90s, but as the decade wore on, it was evident that the first-class performances and all those moonsaults were slowing him down. In truth, Muto's knees were shot, and in order to extend his career, he changed up his look and style, adopting a more ground-based approach and picking the Shining Wizard as a new finish, while reserving his backflip for special occasions only.
What's your favorite finisher? It don't matter if it's WWF, WWE, it could be any promotion.
This helped him continue at a high level for a long time, but the knee problems didn't go away.
But if you want to be honest, I feel like all wrestling companies, they all share the same finishers in a sense, they just have different names.
He was forced to slow down considerably as the years wore on. By the time of his final matches in early 2023, Keiji could barely walk, but he managed to get through them on artificial knees and can now finally rest his battered...
The only wrestling promotions that I watched growing up is probably WWE, TNA, WWF. I mean, I wasn't born watching WWF, but I can watch all the old stuff. WWF, WWE, TNA. I'm not really a fan of AEW, but if it's on TV or something, if it's on, I might. I don't know. I watched a little FCW, a little bit of ROH. I don't even watch that really too much. No, I don't even watch TNA no more. I used to watch TNA.
Body. Number 2, Scott Steiner. There have been few specimens in the history of pro wrestling quite like Scott Steiner. Whether teaming with his brother Rick or going it alone, a young genetic freak set a high standard with a style that incorporated an impressive blend of mat wrestling, suplexes, and high flying. And Steiner was no cruiserweight, cutting a breathless pace and doing all manner of moves that required serious
He was a bruiserweight, a heavyweight.
strength and agility in countless epic matches during his prime. The upshot was that by the late 90s, Scott was very much starting to feel the effects of all those big bumps and the accumulated wear and tear, especially where his back was concerned, and had to take time away from WCW to rest it before coming back as Big Poppa Pump. After WCW went under, Scott had to take some time off, not just to heal up his back, but also because he had developed drop foot syndrome, a condition that he still struggles with to this day. Steiner was then broken down further with other ring-related injuries, including a completely torn ACL and torn trachea, which almost
Man, these injuries, man.
cost him his life in 2007. He won't sell it, and to look at him, he appears relatively okay, but Scott Steiner has been through the ringer and then some. Number 1, Kurt Angle. After Kurt Angle broke his freaking
Oh, I can see why Kurt Angle's at number 1 on this list. Cause Kurt Angle, man, he's done a lot for this company, man. He's been in the company for a long time, almost 30, 40 years. He won a gold medal with a broken neck. So what else can you really say?
neck the first time during the 1996 Olympic wrestling trials, a doctor told him that his amateur career was over. Kurt disagreed and went ahead and won Olympic gold with a broken freaking neck anyway, before deciding to try his hand at the pro stuff. Naturally, repeatedly falling down on something very hard for a living didn't help his neck issues, and Angle suffered 4 separate breaks during his WWE career alone. Incredibly, Kurt kept wrestling for another decade plus while battling serious addiction issues before hanging up his singlets. He suffered many other debilitating injuries in the process due to a style and philosophy that meant that he gave it 100% every night, whether he was performing at WrestleMania.
Definitely did give his all, until he got older. And he was doing this thing even in TNA. Like, bro, he was putting on good matches in TNA. He was doing moonsaults. What was he? He was wrestling in his 30s, 40s. He didn't retire until what? Let me look it up. How old did Kurt Angle retire? How old did Kurt Angle retire? He retired at 56. Wait, no. He didn't retire at 56. Did he retire yet? Because I know he left WWE. It don't make a difference. He's been wrestling since he was like 30, 40 something. He's been wrestling for a long time.
Mania or a small house show. Today, the Olympic hero continues to suffer from a multitude of health issues relating to his glittering career and has expressed his regret at not retiring earlier. Knee and shoulder replacements, back surgeries, and more neck procedures have been needed to not only help
It's a lot of surgeries. I can say that.
manage the constant pain, but also improve Kurt's deteriorating motor skills. It takes a lot of sacrifice to be a GOAT, and few know that.
Alright, that was 10 wrestling legends who destroyed their bodies for the business. Tell me what you guys want to see next in the comments down below. I got more videos coming. Stay tuned, subscribe, like, comment, and yeah, Uriah out.